There's something extraordinary hidden in the book of Daniel that most people never discover. For over 2,500 years, these prophecies have predicted world events with stunning accuracy. Empires have risen and fallen exactly as Daniel foretold. Kings have trembled at these words. Scholars have spent lifetimes trying to understand their depths, but here's what changes everything. These prophecies aren't just about ancient history or distant future events. They're about what's happening right now in our world and what's coming next. If you've been confused about current events, worried about the future, or wondering if God really controls history, you're about to see proof that will shake your understanding of reality. This book contains predictions so specific that skeptics have tried for centuries to prove it was written after the events occurred because they couldn't believe anyone could know the future with such precision. World leaders have consulted these prophecies. Military strategists have studied them, and believers facing persecution have found courage in knowing that God revealed the end from the beginning. Today, you're going to discover prophecies that are unfolding right before your eyes. What you're about to learn will change how you see world news, understand history, and face tomorrow. Get ready to witness the fingerprints of God across human history. Daniel stood in the ruins of everything he had ever known. Jerusalem lay in ashes behind him. The temple where he had worshipped since childhood was destroyed. His family was likely dead or scattered, and now he walked in chains toward Babylon, the most powerful empire on earth. He was probably only a teenager, torn from his homeland and forced to serve the very king who had destroyed his nation. But something remarkable was about to happen that would change the course of history. In Daniel chapter 2, King Nebuchadnezzar had a dream that terrified him so deeply that he couldn't sleep. He summoned all his wise men, magicians, astrologers, and sorcerers, but he didn't just ask them to interpret his dream. He demanded they tell him what he had dreamed without him revealing it first. This was an impossible test. The wise men protested that no king in history had ever made such a demand. They explained that only the gods could reveal such information, and the gods didn't dwell with humans. The king was furious. He issued a decree to execute all the wise men in Babylon, including Daniel and his friends. When Daniel heard about the death sentence, he didn't panic or complain about the injustice. Instead, he asked for time and promised to tell the king both the dream and its interpretation. He gathered his 3 friends, and they prayed desperately to the God of heaven for mercy. That night, God revealed the mystery to Daniel in a vision. Daniel immediately praised God with words that echo through centuries. Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. He changes the times and the seasons. He removes kings and raises up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals deep and secret things. He knows what is in the darkness, and light dwells with him. The next morning, Daniel stood before the most powerful man on earth, the king who held his life in his hands, the ruler whose word could end him with a gesture. But Daniel didn't take credit for what he was about to reveal. He told Nebuchadnezzar plainly that no wise man, astrologer, magician, or soothsayer could show the king what he wanted to know. But there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. Then Daniel described the dream with perfect accuracy. You, O king, were watching, and behold a great image. This great image, whose splendor was excellent, stood before you, and its form was awesome. This image's head was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. You watched while a stone was cut out without hands, which struck the image on its feet of iron and clay and broke them in pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were crushed together and became like chaff from the summer thrashing floors. The wind carried them away so that no trace of them was found, and the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. Nebuchadnezzar must have been stunned. This young Hebrew captive had just described his dream exactly, but Daniel wasn't finished. He proceeded to give the interpretation that would map out human history for the next 2,500 years and beyond. You, O king, are a king of kings, For the God of heaven has given you a kingdom, power, strength, and glory. This was the head of gold. The Babylonian Empire under Nebuchadnezzar was the first great world empire, ruling from approximately 605 to 539 BC. History confirms that Babylon was indeed like gold during this period, magnificent in wealth, power, and glory. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon were one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The city's walls were so thick that chariots could race on top of them. Gold covered the temples and palaces. Nebuchadnezzar had transformed Babylon into the most spectacular city anyone had ever seen. But after you shall arise another kingdom inferior to yours. This was the chest and arms of silver. Daniel predicted that another empire would follow Babylon, one inferior in some way but still powerful. History records exactly what happened. In 539 BC, the Medo-Persian Empire conquered Babylon in a single night when Cyrus the Great diverted the Euphrates River, and his army entered through the riverbed under the city walls. The dual nature of this empire, Medes and Persians, was represented by the 2 arms of silver. This empire lasted from 539 to 331 BC. It was inferior to Babylon in that it lacked the concentrated power and glory, but it was actually larger in territory. The Persians ruled from India to Ethiopia, the largest empire the world had yet seen. Then another 3rd kingdom of bronze which shall rule over all the earth. This was the belly and thighs of bronze. History shows that Alexander the Great and the Greek Empire conquered the Persians in 331 BC. Alexander was one of history's most brilliant military commanders. By age 32, he had conquered most of the known world. The Greeks were famous for their bronze armor and weapons. Their soldiers were called the Bronze Men by their enemies. Greek culture, philosophy, and language spread throughout the known world, exactly as Daniel predicted. The Greek Empire ruled from 331 to 168 BC, and the 4th kingdom shall be as strong as iron, inasmuch as iron breaks in pieces and shatters everything. And like iron that crushes, that kingdom will break in pieces and crush all the others. This was the legs of iron. Rome rose to power and crushed all opposition with military might that the world had never seen. The Roman Empire was like iron, strong, ruthless, and seemingly indestructible. Roman legions conquered nation after nation. Roman roads connected the empire. Roman law governed millions, and Roman power seemed eternal. The 2 legs represented the division of the Roman Empire into eastern and western sections. Rome ruled from 168 BC until its fall in AD 476 in the west and 1453 in the east when Constantinople fell. But Daniel's prophecy didn't stop with Rome. Whereas you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. Yet the strength of the iron shall be in it, just as you saw the iron mixed with ceramic clay. This is where the prophecy becomes absolutely stunning. Daniel predicted that after Rome, there would not be another single world empire. Instead, there would be a divided condition, multiple kingdoms that would have some of Rome's strength but would never unite into one empire again. History has proven this prediction with remarkable accuracy. After Rome fell, Europe fractured into numerous kingdoms and nations. And despite countless attempts to reunite Europe under one ruler, every attempt has failed. Charlemagne tried and failed. Napoleon tried and failed. Kaiser Wilhelm tried and failed. Hitler tried and failed. The European Union has tried to create unity, but it remains a fragmented alliance, not a unified empire. Daniel said these kingdoms would not adhere to one another, just as iron does not mix with clay. For over 1,500 years, this prediction has held true. Nations have formed alliances, marriages between royal families have attempted to create unity, and military conquest has tried to forge a new empire. But Europe has remained divided exactly as Daniel foretold. Think about how impossible this prediction seemed. Every empire in history had been conquered by another empire. The pattern was clear and consistent, but Daniel said the pattern would break after Rome. No single empire would rule the world again in the same way. Skeptics have tried to dismiss this prophecy, but they cannot explain how a young man in ancient Babylon could predict the exact sequence of world empires, and then accurately predict that the pattern would stop. The odds of guessing this correctly are astronomical, but the prophecy reaches even further into the future. And in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people. It shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. This is the stone cut out without hands that struck the image and filled the whole earth. Daniel predicted a final kingdom that would be different from all the others. This kingdom would not be established by human power, represented by the stone cut without hands. It would destroy all earthly kingdoms and last forever. This is the kingdom of God that will be established when Jesus Christ returns. The first time Jesus came, he came as a suffering servant to die for humanity's sins. But the prophecies indicate he will return as a conquering king to establish God's eternal kingdom on earth. Every earthly empire has fallen. Babylon fell, Persia fell, Greece fell, Rome fell, but God's kingdom will never fall. When Nebuchadnezzar heard this interpretation, he was so overwhelmed that he fell on his face before Daniel and commanded that they present an offering to him. The king answered Daniel and said, "Truly your God is the God of gods, the Lord of kings, and a revealer of secrets, since you could reveal this secret." One dream given to a pagan king and interpreted by a Hebrew captive has provided a roadmap of human history that has proven accurate for over 2,500 years. But Daniel's prophecies didn't stop there. Years later, he received visions that provided even more specific details about future events. In Daniel chapter 7, the prophet saw a vision that paralleled the dream of Nebuchadnezzar, but with additional information that would shock anyone who studied it carefully. Daniel saw 4 great beasts coming up from the sea. The first was like a lion with eagle's wings. This represented Babylon again, with its lion symbols that decorated the city and its swift conquests like an eagle. The second beast was like a bear raised up on one side with 3 ribs in its mouth. This was Medo-Persia again, with one side being dominant, the Persians, and the 3 ribs representing the 3 major conquests, Lydia, Babylon, and Egypt. The third beast was like a leopard with 4 wings and 4 heads. This was Greece again, with the 4 wings representing the incredible speed of Alexander's conquests. He conquered the known world in just a few years. The 4 heads represented the 4 kingdoms that emerged after Alexander's death when his empire was divided among his 4 generals. Then came the 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong with huge iron teeth. It devoured, broke in pieces, and trampled everything. This was Rome again, but with more detail. This beast had 10 horns, representing 10 kingdoms that would emerge from the Roman Empire. But then Daniel saw something that made his vision reach into the end times. A little horn came up among the 10 horns, and 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots. This little horn had eyes like the eyes of a man and a mouth speaking pompous words. This little horn has been the subject of intense study for centuries. Daniel was told that this horn represents a king who will speak pompous words against the Most High, persecute the saints, and attempt to change times and laws. He will be given power for a times, and half a time, which most scholars interpret as 3.5 years. This prophecy points to a future world leader who will arise in the last days, often called the Antichrist in other biblical texts. He will emerge from a revived form of the Roman Empire, likely a confederation of European nations. He will speak arrogantly against God, persecute believers, and attempt to change established laws and customs. His reign will be brief but intense. The connection to current events is striking. We are watching the formation of exactly the kind of political structure that could fulfill this prophecy. The European Union represents an attempt to reunite the nations that emerged from the old Roman Empire. While the EU may not be the final form of this prophesied confederation, it demonstrates that such a union is possible and perhaps inevitable. Daniel saw that this little horn would make war against the saints and prevail against them, until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was made in favor of the saints. Then the kingdom would be given to the people of God forever. This is the same ultimate victory that was depicted by the stone crushing the image in chapter 2. No matter how powerful earthly rulers become, no matter how they persecute God's people, their time is limited and their defeat is certain. But Daniel received even more specific prophecies that have proven accurate with stunning precision. In Daniel chapter 8, he saw a vision of a ram with 2 horns being attacked by a male goat with a notable horn between its eyes. The angel Gabriel explained the vision to Daniel directly. The ram which you saw having the 2 horns, they are the kings of Media and Persia, and the male goat is the kingdom of Greece. The large horn that is between its eyes is the first king. History records that this prophecy was fulfilled exactly. Alexander the Great, the notable horn, conquered the Persian Empire with incredible speed, but the prophecy continued. As for the broken horn and the 4 that stood up in its place, 4 kingdoms shall arise out of that nation, but not with its power. Alexander died suddenly at age 32, and his empire was divided among his 4 generals, exactly as prophesied. Cassander took Macedonia and Greece. Lysimachus took Thrace and Asia Minor. Ptolemy took Egypt and Palestine. And Seleucus took Syria and the eastern territories. But the prophecy went even further with details so specific that skeptics have insisted it must have been written after the events occurred. Out of one of these kingdoms would come a fierce king who would grow exceedingly great and would exalt himself and oppose the Prince of Princes. This was fulfilled by Antiochus Epiphanes, a Syrian ruler who reigned from 175 to 164 BC. He attacked Jerusalem, desecrated the temple by sacrificing a pig on the altar, and set up an idol of Zeus in the holy place. He persecuted the Jewish people brutally, forbidding them to practice their religion and killing those who refused to worship Greek gods. The prophecy said he would be broken without human hand, and history records that Antiochus died of a horrible disease, not in battle. The precision of these details is so remarkable that critics have argued the book of Daniel must have been written after these events. But there's a problem with that theory. The Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Hebrew scriptures, was completed around 250 BC and includes the book of Daniel. This means Daniel was written before Antiochus Epiphanes even came to power, proving that these were genuine prophecies, not historical records disguised as predictions. Daniel chapter 9 contains what many scholars consider the most remarkable prophecy in the entire Bible. Daniel had been studying the prophecies of Jeremiah and realized that the 70 years of Babylonian captivity were almost complete. He began to pray and confess the sins of his people, pleading with God to restore Jerusalem. While he was still praying, the angel Gabriel appeared to him with a message. 70 weeks are determined for your people, and for your holy city to finish the transgression, to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. The word weeks literally means sevens in Hebrew, and most scholars agree this refers to weeks of years, or 490 years total. Gabriel then broke down this time period with stunning specificity. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. That's 69 weeks of years, or 483 years. The street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublesome times. History records that the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem was issued by Artaxerxes in 444 BC. If you calculate 483 years from that date, using the 360-day prophetic year that was standard in ancient times, you arrive at approximately AD 33, the exact time when Jesus Christ entered Jerusalem on what we now call Palm Sunday and was hailed as the Messiah. The precision is breathtaking. Daniel predicted to the year when the Messiah would appear in Jerusalem, but the prophecy continued with a tragic prediction. And after the 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself. This predicted the crucifixion of Christ. He would be cut off, killed, but not for his own sins. He would die for the sins of others, and the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. This was fulfilled in AD 70 when the Roman army under Titus destroyed Jerusalem and the temple, exactly as prophesied. The Jewish people were scattered, and the temple has never been rebuilt. But there's a gap in this prophecy that has profound implications. Gabriel spoke of 70 weeks, but only 69 weeks have been fulfilled so far. The 70th week, the final 7 years, remains in the future. This final week is described in the rest of Gabriel's message. Then he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering. And on the wing of abominations shall be one who makes desolate, even until the consummation which is determined is poured out on the desolate. This describes a future ruler, likely the same little horn from chapter 7, who will make a covenant with Israel for 7 years. But halfway through this period, he will break the covenant, stop the temple sacrifices, and set up an abomination that causes desolation. Jesus himself referred to this prophecy in Matthew 24, warning that when people see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, they should flee immediately because great tribulation will follow. This means that for this prophecy to be fulfilled, the temple in Jerusalem must be rebuilt. Currently, the Dome of the Rock, an Islamic shrine, stands on the Temple Mount. But many believe that circumstances will arise that will allow the Jewish people to rebuild their temple, setting the stage for the final fulfillment of Daniel's prophecy. Daniel chapter 11 contains prophecies so detailed about the wars between the Ptolemaic and Seleucid kingdoms, the two main divisions of Alexander's empire, that skeptics absolutely refuse to believe they were written in advance. The chapter describes specific kings, specific battles, specific political marriages, and specific betrayals with such accuracy that it reads like a history textbook. Space doesn't permit examining every detail, but consider just one example. The prophecy describes a king of the north who will come with a great army and shall enter the fortress of the king of the south. This was fulfilled when Antiochus the Great invaded Egypt in 217 BC. The prophecy says he will carry their gods captive to his own land with their precious articles of silver and gold. Historical records confirm that Antiochus took Egyptian idols and treasures back to Syria. The prophecy continues describing the rise of Rome, the coming of the Messiah, and ultimately the rise of the Antichrist in the last days. The final verses of chapter 11 describe a time when the king of the north will attack the king of the south in the end times, leading to a massive conflict in the Middle East. Many scholars believe this describes events that are yet future, possibly involving Russia, Middle Eastern nations, and Israel. Daniel chapter 12 concludes with a promise and a warning. At that time Michael shall stand up, the great prince who stands watch over the sons of your people. And there shall be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation even to that time. And at that time your people shall be delivered, every one who is found written in the book. This describes a future time of unprecedented trouble, which Jesus also mentioned, calling it the Great Tribulation. But the promise is that God's people will be delivered. Those whose names are written in the book of life will be saved. Then comes one of the clearest statements of resurrection in the Old Testament. Many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, some to shame and everlasting contempt. Those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the firmament, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. Daniel was told to seal up the book until the time of the end when knowledge would increase and many would run to and fro. This is a fascinating detail. Daniel's prophecies would not be fully understood until the time of their fulfillment approached. As we get closer to the end times, understanding of these prophecies would increase. And indeed, we are living in an age of unprecedented knowledge and travel, exactly as described. Daniel asked how long it would be until these things are fulfilled. He was told it would be for a time, times, and half a time, the same 3.5-year period mentioned earlier. He was also told that from the time the daily sacrifice is taken away and the abomination of desolation is set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Then another number was given. Blessed is he who waits and comes to the 1,335 days. These specific time periods have been debated by scholars for centuries. They clearly relate to the final 7-year period, but their exact meaning will likely not be fully understood until the events begin to unfold. So what does all this mean for us today? First, these prophecies prove beyond reasonable doubt that the Bible is divinely inspired. No human being could predict the rise and fall of specific empire centuries in advance with such accuracy. No one could predict the exact year when the Messiah would appear in Jerusalem. No one could describe detailed historical events before they happened unless God revealed them. The book of Daniel stands as powerful evidence that God knows the future and has revealed it to those who seek him. Second, these prophecies show that God is in control of human history. Empires rise and fall according to his plan. Kings rule only by his permission. Nations exist to fulfill his purposes. When world events seem chaotic and frightening, believers can rest in the knowledge that God is not surprised or worried. He has already written the end of the story, and his kingdom will triumph. Third, these prophecies warn us that difficult times are coming. The Bible consistently teaches that before Christ returns, there will be a period of great tribulation unlike anything the world has ever seen. A powerful ruler will arise who will deceive many and persecute believers. Wars, natural disasters, and social upheaval will increase, but these events are not random. They are birth pangs, signs that the new world is about to be born. Fourth, these prophecies call us to be ready. Jesus said that no one knows the day or hour of his return, but he also said we should watch for the signs so we are not caught unprepared. The stage is being set for the fulfillment of end-time prophecies. Israel exists as a nation again after 2,000 years of dispersion. Jerusalem is back in Jewish hands. Technology exists that could fulfill prophecies about global communication and surveillance. The political structures are forming that could give rise to a world leader. Fifth, these prophecies remind us that our time on earth is temporary. Whether Christ returns in our lifetime or we die before he comes, our earthly existence is brief compared to eternity. The question is not if these prophecies will be fulfilled, but whether we will be ready when they are. Daniel himself provides a model for how believers should live in difficult times. He was taken from his home as a teenager and forced to serve pagan kings in a foreign land. He faced pressure to compromise his faith, threats to his life, and the heartbreak of seeing his nation destroyed. Yet he remained faithful to God through it all. He prayed 3 times a day even when it was illegal. He refused to defile himself with the king's food. He interpreted dreams and visions with humility, always giving God the credit. He served his earthly rulers with excellence while maintaining his ultimate loyalty to heaven. And God honored his faithfulness by giving him influence with kings and revealing to him secrets about the future. When Daniel was thrown into the lion's den for praying to God, the king himself hoped that Daniel's God would deliver him. And when God shut the lions' mouths and Daniel emerged unharmed, even the pagan king issued a decree honoring the God of Daniel. This is the kind of faithful witness believers are called to maintain, especially as the world grows darker and opposition increases. The prophecies of Daniel are not just about predicting the future. They are about building faith in the present. When you understand that God revealed world history thousands of years in advance, and every detail has come true exactly as predicted, it changes how you face uncertainty. You know that God is real, that his word is true, and that his promises are certain. You know that no matter what happens in the world, God's plan will prevail. You know that your life has meaning because you are part of a story that God has been writing since before time began. You know that your faithful service matters because you are building God's eternal kingdom that will never fall. The hidden prophecies of Daniel are not really hidden at all. They are written plainly in Scripture for anyone who takes time to study them carefully. But they remain hidden to those who refuse to look, who dismiss the Bible as ancient mythology, or who are too busy with earthly concerns to investigate eternal truth. These prophecies have been waiting for thousands of years to speak to this generation. They have been preserved through the destruction of Jerusalem, the persecution of believers, the burning of Bibles, and the attacks of skeptics. They have survived because God intended them to be a witness to every generation that He is real and His word is true. Now you have discovered what kings and scholars have studied for centuries. You have seen proof that God knows the future and controls history. You have learned that we are living in the time when these ancient prophecies are moving toward their final fulfillment. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you ignore these warnings and continue living as if this world is all that matters? Or will you recognize that time is short and eternity is real? Will you surrender your life to the God who knows the end from the beginning? The same God who revealed these prophecies to Daniel is calling people today to trust Him with their lives. He is not distant or uncaring. He is intimately involved in human history and personally concerned about every individual. He proved His love by sending His Son Jesus Christ to die for our sins and rise from the dead, fulfilling prophecies written centuries before He was born. If you have been impacted by these hidden prophecies, do not keep this information to yourself. Share this video with others who need to understand what is happening in our world and what is coming next. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss biblical truth that could change your life. And leave a comment telling which prophecy from Daniel amazed you most. The prophecies are being fulfilled, the time is short, and the King is coming. Are you ready?